Welcome back. In this video, we're going to create our first spawner. But before we do that, I would like to make a couple of changes to our game. So first of all, I would like to change the sample scene to be the game scene and reload that scene. Then the second thing is in the prefabs, what you will notice is that your prefabs currently are only partial free prefabs or variants of a prefab. So for example, if you drag the banana into, well, in your case, the banana will have the same problem, and the banana cut are both partial prefabs, and I already unpacked the other bananas. So you can see the icons here on the left hand side, they differ. So here, this is a variant where you have this extra gray side of this box, and this is a real prefab. So go over to your banana cut and right click onto it and then unpack the banana completely. So this will make your banana, or banana cut in this case, a real prefab. Do the same thing with the banana if you haven't done that, because I just did it off screen, off camera, so to speak. And now we're good to go, because now we have some proper prefabs that we can work with, and we are not working with these variants of prefabs. So now let's save that real quick. So let's save our game scene. And another little change that I would like to make is that instead of using the skybox for my background, I would like to use a solid color. So I'm going to use some grayish color that will emphasize a little bit the beautiful yellow color of my bananas. Okay. Now let's reposition this banana a little bit, so maybe we can see all bananas at once, so the right one as well. And now we can see all bananas at once. This will look a little better. Okay, now let's take care of our spawner, because what I would like to do is I would like to have a spawner at the beginning. Well, for now, I'll just put it in the center. So I'm just going to create a empty object, and I'm going to call this one spawner. Okay, and let me reposition it. So reset its position to 0, 0, 0. And now this spawner will hold a script. So let's go ahead and create a new script. And I'm just going to call this script spawner. Now you have seen how to spawn objects. For example, instantiate the two banana parts in comparison to the whole banana at the same spot. You can now just create a spawner using coroutines, as we have done so in the past in earlier lectures. For example, in our rolling danger chapter, we have used that. So if you feel confident enough, feel free to spawn objects yourself. So to build this spawner script all by yourself, I can just tell you, you will need to know the prefab that you want to spawn. You will need to know the positions where you want to spawn the prefabs. Then you will need to know after how much time you want to spawn your game objects. If you want to have random numbers in between, you will have to use random range for that. So use the IEnumerator coroutines that we have seen earlier, as well as you will need to use yield return, wait for a couple of seconds. Okay, so these are enough tips I'll give you. So if you feel like building this yourself, try it, and yeah, good luck. Okay, so if you haven't tried it, no worries. I'm going to show you how we are going to do it in this course. So first of all, I want to have the prefab that I need to spawn. So I'm going to call this one fruit to spawn prefab. Then I need to have the different positions where I want to spawn. So I'm going to call this one spawn places. And by the way, if you haven't had this variable, if you tried it for yourself, no worries, because we're not going to use it for now, at least not in this video. In the next video, we're going to use it, however, because I don't want to only have one spawn place. I want to have multiple positions from where my fruits can spawn. And then I'm going to create a float min weight variable, which I'm going to set to 1/3 of a second roughly. And then a max weight, which I'm going to set to 1 second. So what I want to do is, I want to say every 0.3 to 1 seconds, please go ahead and spawn something. Okay. And if you want to spawn something regularly, what you can use are coroutines. And we have used coroutines before. We need to use the IEnumerator keyword. So we need to return an IEnumerator with this method. And I'm going to call this method spawn fruits. So you see we get an error here because it needs to have a return, a yield return statement. So what I'm just going to say, while true, go ahead and yield return new wait for seconds. So here, just wait for, let's say, 3 seconds, and then spawn things and spawn things again. So what I'm going to say here for now is just going to be a log spawning fruit. So now instead of using 3 seconds, what I would like to use is actually going to be this min wait and max wait. So range between those two. So what we can do here is we can just use the random range method, random.range method. And here we need to pass the minimum as well as the maximum value. So I'm just going to use min wait and max wait here. Okay, so what that will do is it will just wait for either 0.3 seconds or 1 second or anything in between those values. Okay, so it will be a random value that we get here. And then we're going to spawn a fruit. And as you might recall, if we wanted to use a coroutine, we would have to use the start coroutine method and pass our IEnumerator routine inside of it like so. Okay, so start coroutine. This means that once the spawner comes into play and the start method will be called, we want to start this coroutine, spawn fruits, which will, while true, which means constantly, so no end. This while true is basically an infinite loop, but that's fine as long as we're inside of a coroutine, because here we're just saying wait for this amount of time and then do something, and then the next iteration and so forth. Okay, so this is something, this while equals true is something you would never do unless you make sure that you return at one point out of this while loop, but it's fine using our IEnumerator and coroutines. All right, so now let's go ahead and use this spawner. So let's assign the spawner script that we just created to our spawner game object by dragging it in here. And now you can see we have the spawn places as well as min wait and max wait. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it and look at my console. And we can see spawning fruit, spawning fruit, spawning fruit. Okay, now let's actually spawn fruits, because we want to spawn fruit. So we need to define which fruit we want to spawn. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to spawn my banana here, like so. So drag the banana from the prefabs into your fruit to spawn prefab. That by itself, of course, won't do the trick, because now instead of just waiting and debug logging something, we need to actually spawn the fruit, which means we need to create a game object using the instantiate method. So game object, I'm going to call this game object fruit. Using the instantiate method, I'm going to spawn our fruit to spawn game object. And then I'm going to spawn it at transform position. So at the position of our parent, as well as the rotation of our, well, it's not the parent, but it's the spawner, right? So of our spawner. So it will spawn at the position of the spawner as well as at the with the rotation of the spawner, which means no rotation at all, because our spawner, if we look at it, is not rotated. So the rotation is at 0, 0, 0. So now let's look at it again and see how it's going to spawn fruits in the center of our screen all the time. And there we are. So banana, banana, banana. And you can see there are different distances in time between those bananas. Now we have a couple of problems. On one hand, we're creating bananas all the time, and they are in our game, even though they disappear from our viewpoint. If you look at them, there they are. So we're spawning a bunch of bananas. Man, monkeys would be so happy seeing these many bananas being spawned, but they're flying and falling and falling. And at one point, so let's say I let this run for a couple of hours, even my PC with an RTX 3070 would crash. Okay, so maybe not even hours, maybe even after a couple of minutes. Okay, so that's definitely something you want to avoid, which is why we need to make sure that they only have a certain lifespan. And we're going to fix this a little later. For now, let's save this scene and let's go over to the next video where we're going to move forward with our code.